There we go. And it's relevant to the topic today because we're talking today is Chris Carver. He's the CEO of Session Board, and he's talking about how you can use your content and repurpose it to get the most out of it. So vote for this. It might be an interesting piece of data for him to refer to, but otherwise I'm going to hand over to Chris now.
There we go. Hey, everybody. So I'm Chris Carver with Session Board. And for those, I guess, seasoned pros, a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about may be, very simple. So bear with me. But as I was putting this together, I really wanted to hit on some things that, just are, may seem obvious, but at times when we get busy on working on our events, they can slip by the wayside. So the first tip that I have when I was running events, and we've talked to a lot of different organizers and work with a number of different organizers, is just making it easy on your speakers. So what do I mean by that? So when the speaker gets selected, I can't tell you how many times you get an email and there's a list of like 5 things that you need to do, and it's just in an email, and it's like, get your logo, get here, find your bio, and then put it on social media, and you give them nice directions in an email, but you could go one step further, and there's actually a couple other companies out here today like Glean In and Snowball that allow you to leverage it pretty easily and be able to take that information and quickly put it online. So give them a shout out to the folks at Glean In and Snowball. Definitely a big piece of advice to leverage something like that, because I can tell you conversion of speakers actually pushing it out to their network is a lot higher when you use a system like that. So the next challenge we see a lot in an idea of making it easy on your speakers is giving them one place to get all of their information and go back to their information. I can't tell you, even for this and other conferences where you're speaking at, again, if email is the primary means of giving them directions, that they're going to have 15 or 20 emails that they're going to have to sift through, and then it becomes so cumbersome that likely you're ending up having to hound them and spend time on pulling information back. So giving them a portal that shows them their sessions, shows them all of the specific tasks that they need to see and do, uploads any files, may link out to other systems that you want them to pull into, is really critical. I know it's very simple, but again, the idea of getting away from being bombarded by 5 or 10 emails that you have to sift through, you're going to get a higher rate of conversion. And remember, every time you have to respond to an email or remind somebody, that's time. That's time on you, that's time on your administrator, which takes away from from other really key things that they could be doing. So the next thing, this has come up a few times, and I don't see a lot of organizers take advantage of it, but I think it can be really easy, which is getting your speakers to very quickly, whether it's over Zoom, you have an onboarding call with them, they actually take 20 or 30 seconds to quickly give a snippet about what they're going to talk about. So very simple, do it over Zoom, record it. You don't have to be Martin Scorsese to do it at high production value, but now you have a piece of content that you can leverage for other things. So, you can take that one piece of content, 20 to 30 seconds, and then you now have it for email, you have it for all of your social channels, you have it for potentially post-event, they have it to share, another resource for them to share. And one of the things that, in doing this, there's a number of platforms that transcribe the information and automatically put it on the video. So there's platforms like Rev or Mixed Captions or Temi, where immediately it can put what they're saying right on the video, because remember, when they're posting these things, oftentimes, I think it's like 90% of folks, when they're watching videos on LinkedIn, they're watching it with the audio off. And so having that caption, so how do you do it? There's platforms like these that will do it very easily for you. So again, another very simple, no-brainer thing, but it's something that you can get a lot of leverage out of, a lot of promotion out of by doing that. Kind of in that same light, what I think is really powerful, and many of you may do this already, but being able to have somebody in the audience that's marking where they're talking about certain points, where their top three items that they mentioned in their speech, in their conversation, and then being able to take that and cut that into short-form videos and be able to leverage that again for post-event engagement. So how do you do that? So there's a number of simple video editing platforms to be able to do it, whether it's Premiere, which can be more complex, but then there's things like Vimeo now that have a very basic editing solution. Again, I believe you don't have to be some crazy editor to be able to take that information and be able to put it on social or be able to leverage it in a nurture campaign for ongoing things after the event. So being able to make sure that you are you're remembering or writing down when they actually said those key points, and then being able to take that video, however you're actually doing it at your event, uploading it into that system, and then once you have those top 3 or top 4 topics, think about the number of distribution points that you now have. So for one video, I could take that one video, I throw it into Canva. I can actually create Canva is a solution that allows you, if you're not familiar with it, to be able to do a quick little intro and outro. So now you have a nice intro card and an outro card. And now if I have 3 points from that talk, I now have 3 different assets that I can leverage throughout email, social, re-engagement, and things of that nature. So Canva is a really easy tool to be able to do that. Again, you don't have to be an engineer to be able to produce these things. The other thing about that you can also do without just the video, but using Canva, is take those points, be able to put it in a Canva type system, and now you have 3 additional assets. So we had 1 talk, we now have 3 videos that can be distributed on a number of different avenues, and then you have these title cards that can also be shared, whether it's pre-event, post-event, throughout the year for all, engagement, things of that nature. And so this is kind of an example of, now I have these 3 things, and you can leverage it on any and all of the social channels that you are, focus on. And one big recommendation, and you guys may already know this, is I'm a big believer that you don't have to own all of the social channels for this distribution. You obviously understand where your ideal persona is, and I say double, triple down on that. So if they're on LinkedIn, if that's where everybody's at, rather than focus on TikTok or Instagram and trying to do all of it and worrying about being a master of those, really focus on the specific area. And the content distribution that you can get still can be really effective that way, but you can definitely go and double down on 1 or 2 specific platforms is my suggestion. So when I think about your speakers and speaker content, I think about a few different personas. There's obviously the administrator, so you want to make it as easy as possible on you and your team so that you can focus on the most important stuff, which is the actual experience. The second persona that I think is really critical when I think about content distribution is your evaluators, if you are evaluating submissions and evaluating speakers. If it's hard for them, they're either going to try to breeze through it and not be super focused on it, or they ultimately, what you want to be able to do is make it as simple as possible so that they can go through and ensure that they are recommending the best speakers. So how do you make it easy on your team, especially your evaluators? Well, obviously, and this is part of what we do, but really creating a platform, not a spreadsheet where they're entering information in, where a lot of the communication points can get crossed up. You want to make sure that it's all in one place for them. They have exactly the different submissions that they have to do on, in one area, and they need to be able to quickly click through and give you the information that they need for the different tracks and whatever. So having a system that helps you with that, ultimately, on the end, I believe will help with content distribution. And so the last key tip, and it goes in line with the last one, is so having a system that allows you to collect the submissions, it makes it easy on your evaluators, makes it easy to manage your agenda and things of that nature, but also onboard your speakers so that they have one place for it. And then the key thing, I think, is really having one place for all of that content where it can live, and then being able to actually distribute it in a number of different fashions. So making sure that you can easily get it to your mobile application, making sure you can get it easily to your agenda or registration system, and then being able to make sure your AV team has the appropriate information, as well as ultimately post-event, your marketing team needs to have one place where they can quickly go and sort and filter by track, by tag, whatever those components are, because if you don't have that, ultimately it's going to be more time consuming to be able to redistribute that content that is being created at an event. And ultimately the worst part of it is if you don't have a centralized solution, it's my belief that it then extends the amount of time that you need to go and find that information to then redistribute it. So if you don't have it immediately, which then right after the event you can start distributing, it's going to take you 2, 3, 4 weeks to get over the hangover from the event, now start to think about how do we re-engage folks, whereas if the information was right at your fingertips, you would be able to just jump into engagement mode or marketing mode or community-based mode type thing. And that's in that same line, you want to make sure you put your content first. So seamless integrations, having that content repository, having easy exports, being able to simply search through that information, and then make sure you either have a system early on that's allowing you to tag it by track, by topic, by speaker, by location. Any of that needs to be done up front, because if you're thinking about doing it after the fact, you're likely not going to be able to tag all of the information appropriately. So that's why we really think having a system to be able to do that is really critical. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Hi, thank you. That was really good. Could you give us an example of an event where you recently applied this method and what worked and what maybe what didn't?
Sure. Part of this is we've compiled from multiple events. A good example for that I can give you is I recently spoke at an event, and one of that first points that I mentioned is I went back to the actual organizer and said, hey, how many speakers actually shared the information? And they're like, well, it's hard to get the speakers to actually do anything. We're so focused on trying to collect the information. Whereas then you go and talk to like a Glean In or a Snowball, and they'll actually have the case study information on how much they can drive the conversion, because you're taking steps away from really what the speaker has to do. Now, if the speaker is just focused on sharing that information, you definitely have a much higher impact of that. Trying to get time with your speakers. Yeah, so my suggestion is, where are the speakers most motivated? And oftentimes it's right around the selection process. So they obviously take the time to enter their submissions. They're applying basically and they're submitting the higher level information on their abstract. Before you actually approve them, I would actually take that moment in time, depending on how many speakers you have, and reach out to them for whatever you need before you actually give them that final approval. Because once you give them that final approval, they'll likely oftentimes they go dark until maybe 2 weeks before the event. So my suggestion, like on the example of that 20 or 30 second video, is I would actually reach out to them and say, hey, whether it's in person, I always am a big fan of picking up the phone. I know that takes time, but honestly, if you think about how much follow-up you have to do on the back end to try to get some of these components, I think that you'll save a lot of time by reaching out to them personally. And in that personal reach out, I would have a combination of, we've selected you, and as part of that, we want to do right now what your 20-second or 30-second what they submitted in their submission, their topic would be. And that in and of itself, now you have the necessary information that at least you have for a marketing point of view. And the reality is people are people. They're going to push off submitting anything else until late in the game, which is why having a portal that's automatically reminding them as opposed to you reminding them, I think is so critical. So my suggestion for this type of answer is the biggest challenge that I see is getting the initial information from them. So my answer would be having a system that's doing the automatic reminding, and number two, right at the point of selection, that's where I would immediately get the marketing components to make sure that they can ultimately push that out to their network. So the idea is collecting that information, and then you're sending them back an asset that they can share.
Yeah, I have a question regarding using the content that is produced during the event for marketing campaigns and so on. The speakers we have are usually our clients, so those are community events, and they are willing to share the content with that community specifically. So they're like, it's okay to share the slides afterwards. Sometimes the recordings, some brands say no right away.
Yep.
And I'm struggling because I'm feeling that I might overwhelm them and lose my speakers if I say like, would you give us the approval to use that content then on our website and so on? It's like, oh my gosh, then I have to involve communication or legal department in my company. So I'd rather not do it, so I won't be a speaker.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that type of situation?
Well, I want to give you the best answer I can. A lot of it is about the relationship with the speaker, right? And if they can have that trust that you will follow their lead. So if they are having to go through legal and it's going to create more bottlenecks or headaches for them, then they need to have that option to know and trust that you're not going to distribute the information if they say no. However, I think that it would be a miss not to have that conversation, because you think about the psychology of why we're speaking at these events. And oftentimes, I think there's a pretty significant distribution of people that are speaking because they're either promoting something or they want to be more engaged into the community. So how can you help with that? Like thinking about their reason for getting up on stage. Maybe they're just want to educate just to their specific market. Well, that's still an interesting kind of potential engagement point after the fact with just that particular group. I'm a big believer in nurture campaigns. So really kind of segmenting that audience, and how can you continue that conversation with that, if they would allow you, with that specific group. I think that is going to bubble up other ideas and other more conversation. So I know that's not a direct answer. Everybody has their own motivations, but I would have the conversation with them, because if you don't, then you're going to miss out on potential other really good, conversations that you could have from a community standpoint.
I actually just want to add on to that point. I'm an event content manager, and if you send out speaker T&Cs, one of the clauses that I have is they agree to share. We're allowed to share the content with our audience unless they tell us. That's covered then. They have to come to us to say you cannot share this content. That is in my opinion, the easiest way to do it. So set out those expectations. It should be in your T's and C's with your speakers of their conduct and, them sending content the way that they're working with you. So that's an easier way to get around it, I think. So you're I understand your problem with legal departments and everything, absolutely. But I find T's and C's is sometimes the best way to kind of go through that. I wanted to ask you, so obviously Session Board, you're here, promoting your platform as well. I'm interested to hear more, but do you offer your solution event by event, or is this on a monthly basis and you can, create as many events and using your platform for that process? How does it work? Yeah,
so again, so of course we have our company Session Board. So how we like to do it is, you have all of your details and you have different events for different types of topics, right? However, what I think is important is having that, a cross-event database of all of your speakers that you can always go back to, and then you can always go back into your event, right? I also think when we thought about creating the system, you want to be able to reuse that information or be able to access the content, ongoing. And so it kind of serves as that repository in that way. And then obviously this type of thing with a platform like ours, it needs to be really simple to clone an event and create a new event and things of that nature. So we try to make it easy to do that. I think if it's up to the individual organizer to tell us how hard and easy it is, we try to make it easy to do it that way.
I don't know if anyone else has got anything. What's the onboarding process? Sorry, I can't hear myself. What's the onboarding process like for speakers as well? So when we're telling them we're using this platform,
Yep.
this is something that you need to sign on to, this is how we're going to communicate with you. I think some people can have those reservations. Most people are used to doing it via email.
Yeah.
But what's the onboarding process like for speakers? What are they going to see when we say, please use this platform?
Yep.
How does it work?
Yeah, so it depends on how your speakers are coming in. Oftentimes, you may do a call for submissions, but you also may have, 20% of your speakers that you already know. So we try to make it very easy, and it's really up to you whether you like to communicate via email, making sure that when they get that link to their portal, it's a specific portal for them. So it's tied to their email, and in that interface, they're just putting in their password so they can immediately go into the portal and see exactly what they need to see and do there. So we actually come from the music festival world early on with a different product we had, and you can imagine what it's like to try to onboard an artist or onboard a vendor or a staff and crew. So we've taken a lot of those learnings and applied that to speakers, and it has to be essentially a 1 or 2 step process. It can't be more than that. But when they actually see all of the stuff that they need to see and do, and I would put this into your communication, why you want them to use some type of portal as opposed to sifting through email, people get it pretty quickly. I remember even speaking for this, I was having to sift through a few different email chains, and that gets really cumbersome. So we try to make it super easy, but I would also put that in your explanation as to why you've gone to this solution. So. All right. Good? Well, thank you, everybody.